A 14-year-old girl walks into a biker diner, clutching a school photo and a secret no one will believe. She points to a face in the background and says, "He's not my teacher." What follows forces an outlaw club to become her only line of defense and exposes the predator everyone else ignored. The Stone Vultures MC rolled into the Valley Diner just after noon, engines going quiet one by one as the bikes lined up in the gravel like weathered sentinels. They'd been riding since morning, some charity run through the mountains, raising cash for a children's hospital a few counties out. The kind of ride that still made the patch feel like it meant something. Inside, the place smelled like scorched coffee and old grease. Duncan, the club president, claimed the corner booth while the rest scattered among the cracked vinyl benches, each one sagging from years of wait. Kent, sergeant-at-arms and perpetual wall watcher thanks to his time in corrections, took the seat with the clearest view. He was halfway through some story about a deer that nearly turned Tiny into roadkill when she walked in. Couldn't have been more than 14. Hair a mess, sweatshirt several sizes too big, sleeves swallowing her hands. Her eyes darted too fast, skimming faces, windows, exits, tracking everything, trusting nothing. Most folks in the diner barely looked up, but Kent saw it, the way her jaw clenched when she looked their way. She walked straight over. "Excuse me," she said. Her hands were trembling, but her voice held steady. "Are you guys the Stone Vultures?" A couple of younger guys smirked. Gus jabbed his buddy, grinning. "Depends who's a skin, kid." But she didn't bite, just pulled something from her pocket, a glossy school photo freshly printed, and slid it across the table toward Kent. "He's in this," she said, pointing to a man standing in the background. "He's not my teacher." Silence dropped like a switch. Kent took the photo. It looked like a typical group shot. Kids crowded in front of lockers, grinning for a yearbook page. But in the back, half hidden by a doorway, there was a man. Mid-40s, narrow face, watching the camera with a look that didn't belong in a school. Kent's grip tightened. "What's your name?" Duncan asked, tone shifting to something harder. "Lily Barnes." "And the guy, what's his name?" "He says it's Mr. Leroy. Claims he's a sub. But I checked. He's not on the staff list. I've seen him 3 times this week, always near the exits. Always watching." Kent glanced at Duncan, something passing between them without a word. "You tell anyone at school?" Duncan asked. Lily gave a bitter laugh. "Tried. Counselor said I was imagining things. Security told me to knock off the stories. Foster parents think I want attention." She crossed her arms. "Nobody listens to kids like me." Kent stared at the face in the photo again. The posture, the tilt of the head. A flicker of memory surfaced 15 years back, a file photo from his intake days. "Victor Crane," he muttered. Duncan leaned closer. "You sure?" "Yeah. Predator. Did time, skipped out on parole more than once. Changed names a few times too." Kent tapped the man's face. "That's him. Older. But I'd bet on it." The table went still. Lily didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped, a shift from defensive to something more fragile. Someone finally believed her. Duncan pulled out his phone. "Palmer," he said when someone picked up. "Need a face run. Sending it now." He snapped a shot of the photo and fired it off. "Match against anyone with child-related charges. Include known aliases." Lily watched, stunned. She'd come hoping maybe they'd make a scene or threaten someone, shake things up enough to get noticed. She hadn't expected them to move like a tactical unit. "Why us?" Kent asked. She met his eyes. "Because when a kid complains, no one cares. But everybody's scared of you." Kent almost smiled. Duncan slid his phone aside. "We'll look into it. But you need to stay sharp, Lily. Don't approach him. Don't let him see you watching." "I won't. If anything changes, anything at all, you call this number." He scribbled digits on a napkin and handed it over. "Day or night. Understand?" Lily folded the napkin like it was something precious. She looked like a kid again, small, unsure, maybe even hopeful. "Thank you," she said softly. She turned to leave, but Kent called out, "Lily." She paused. "You did the right thing." She gave a small nod, then pushed through the doors and was gone. The vultures sat there for a moment, no one speaking. Then Duncan stood. "Church. Tonight. Everyone." Because sometimes trouble doesn't come with flashing lights or warning sirens. Sometimes it hides in the background of a school photo, waiting on someone gutsy enough to call it out. Palmer's voice came through Duncan's phone just before midnight, thin and crackling with static. "Got a hit. 3 aliases, 2 states. It's a mess and it's ugly." The air inside the clubhouse was thick with smoke and a slow-burning tension. The full table was gathered, every patched member leaning in over the scarred oak, the leather of their cuts creaking in the quiet. Palmer sat at the far end, laptop open, casting dim mugshots across the wall, each one capturing the same gaunt face as it aged through 15 years on the run. "Victor Crane," Palmer began. "Born 71. Oregon conviction, solicitation of a minor. Did 4 years, paroled in 2009. Skipped supervision 6 months later." He clicked, and the next image filled the wall. Resurfaced in Nevada as Victor Cross. Flagged for some boundary issues in a middle school, but slipped away before they could pin charges. Then nothing. Dead air until now. Kent's jaw tightened as he stared at the man's face. "And now he's in our backyard, hiding behind the name Leroy." Palmer nodded. "Filed a sub-request at Valley Ridge High under the name James Leroy. Identity checks came back clean because the real Leroy died in a car wreck 2 years ago. This guy's running a stolen life, and he's using it to walk straight into schools." Duncan stood, pushing his chair back with a scrape. His daughter was 16. Different district, sure, but close enough. Just the thought made his fists ball at his sides. "Tomorrow morning we take this to the school. They see the photo, they hear what we know." "They won't listen," Gus said quietly. He was the youngest full member at the table, 23, with the haunted look of someone who'd outlived a few versions of himself already. "Guys like us walk in talking about predators. They see the bikers, not the threat. Then we make them listen." But Gus wasn't wrong. The next morning, Duncan and Kent left the colors at home. They wore clean jeans, neutral jackets, nothing that screamed MC. No ink showing. When they got to Valley Ridge High, they were made to wait. 40 minutes in stiff plastic chairs before a secretary finally waved them into the principal's office. Principal Carmichael looked like he'd been laminated, thin, neat, wire-frame glasses perched perfectly on his nose. His smile came out strained and practiced, like he used it mostly to defuse angry parents. They laid it all out: Palmer's research, the mugshots, the school records, everything. Carmichael listened politely, hands steepled beneath his chin, nodding in the slow, non-committal way people do when they've already decided not to care. When they finished, he cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, I do appreciate your concern. I truly do. But these are unverified claims, and the man in question passed his background check. Unless there's official action from law enforcement, we can't just... You've got a predator in your halls." Kent cut in, voice low and sharp. "We're not speculating." Carmichael didn't blink. "And I'm telling you that if you continue making baseless accusations or harassing school personnel, I'll have to contact the authorities. We have policies for a reason. This isn't some vigilante film." Duncan leaned forward, planting both palms on the desk. "There's a scared kid involved. 14. That doesn't register." "Lily Barnes," the principal said, tone growing clipped, "has a history of disruptive behavior. Cries wolf often. Her caseworker has been informed about this most recent fabrication." The air left the room. When they walked out, they carried nothing but frustration, and the veiled threat of police involvement if they pushed again. Back at the clubhouse, Morgan was waiting at the table. At 67, She'd outlived most of the men who'd patched in with her late husband. She still ran the books, stitched the wounds, and served as the moral compass no one dared ignore. She had Lily's backpack open. "Girl came by while you were out," she said. "Said she wanted to show me something." Inside was a sketchpad. But this wasn't idle doodling. This was evidence. Surveillance, really, wrapped in graphite and teenage precision. One page was a detailed map of the school's east entrance, with scribbled times, notes on patterns. Another showed a blue sedan, the rear bumper dented just so. There was a close-up of a wrist, a tattoo etched on the skin, 3 circles interlocked like a warning. Gus flipped through the pages slowly, careful not to smudge the pencil lines. "She's been following him." "Not just following," Morgan said, pulling a folded sheet from the back. "She's been planning." It was a layout, simple but exact. A storage facility, it looked like. Labeled units, gates, a small office. And at the bottom, scrawled in small, neat handwriting, "Just in case." "In case of what?" Duncan asked, though he already knew. Morgan met his eyes. "In case she vanished and needed someone to know where to look." Silence settled in like a fog. Kent snatched up his phone and hit her number. It rang 6 times. Voicemail. He called again. Same. Gus was already on his own device, pinging contacts from the system, street kids, a couple shelters. "I'll check the hangouts. She might have passed through." Duncan gave a nod. "Morgan, stay here. If she comes back, don't let her leave." Palmer, traffic cams, 10-mile radius around the school. "I want eyes on that sedan." As orders spun out and the club began moving like the machine it was built to be, Kent stayed frozen, eyes on the floor plan Lily had drawn. It wasn't frantic. It wasn't a cry for help. It was measured, intentional. A map drawn by a girl who knew no one was coming unless she left a trail. He looked again at the sketch of the tattoo, the 3 rings looping over each other like a chain. And in that moment, Kent couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was coming next, they were already 1 step behind. The phone rang at 6 sharp, not Lily, but a patrol officer. Her backpack had been found dumped by the school's north gate, the one with the busted camera everyone knew about and no one ever got around to fixing. Duncan pulled into the scene before the yellow tape was even set. The backpack sat on the hood of a cruiser, half-zipped, its contents already logged. No phone, no wallet, just the sketchpad, and a pencil snapped in half like a silent warning. "You family?" the officer asked. "Close enough." The cop gave him a look, the kind that weighed you, tried to measure the trouble you were willing to cause. He must have come up short because he didn't press. "We canvassed the area. No signs of a struggle. No witnesses. Could be a runaway situation." "She's not a runaway." "Foster kid, record of instability." "She's not a runaway," Duncan said again, lower this time and colder. The kind of cold that made people stop talking. By midday, the Vultures clubhouse had morphed into something else entirely. Maps covered the walls, red pins stabbed into likely locations. Palmer had footage from traffic cams playing on a loop across 3 monitors, hunting for that dented blue sedan. Gus came back from the streets empty, a scowl tugging at his jaw. Hit every corner, every shelter, every park. Nobody's seen her since she left school yesterday. She was spotted heading toward Maine. After that, nothing. Morgan sat at the long table, Lily's sketchpad open in front of her like a sacred text. She studied each page slowly, glasses slipping down her nose, her finger tracing over a map. It wasn't just lines, it was layered, thoughtful, intentional. "This isn't some throwaway guess," Morgan said quietly. She knew this place, every angle. "Look at this, gate sight lines, lighting blind spots, unit numbers. This wasn't drawn from memory. It's from experience." Kent leaned in. "You think she'd been there before? Or she knew someone who had?" Palmer stopped typing. "Hold on. Got something." One of the cam feeds froze on screen, blue sedan, timestamped 3:47 p.m., just over an hour after school let out. Rear bumper, right side dent, turning east off Valley Ridge onto Highway 39. That's him, Kent said. Palmer zoomed in. The driver's face was turned just enough to confirm the match. It was Crane. He's heading toward the industrial strip. Lot of storage sites out there. Duncan grabbed his vest. How many? 7 within 10 miles. Then we check all 7. They broke off in pairs. Duncan and Kent went north. Gus and Crow took south. Palmer stayed behind, tracking law enforcement chatter and pinging any digital trails Crane might have left. The first few stops were quick, too busy, too open. Places with security cameras and foot traffic, the kind that would make Crane flinch. The fourth site had been gutted years ago. Chain link rusted to dust. Nothing left but spider webs and scrap. Gus checked in over radio. Nothing so far. Moving to number 6. Kent stood by the open truck bed, Lily's sketchpad spread in his hands. The lines were beginning to wear at the folds, but something stuck with him, the shape of the gate, the layout of the office. This isn't a guess, he said aloud. She knew this place. Duncan looked up. What are you thinking? These kids, they get shuffled around. Different homes, facilities. What if she lived near one of these places? What if she'd been there? Duncan was already dialing. Morgan. Pull Lily's placement history. Any group homes near industrial storage. Morgan's fingers flew across her keyboard. A beat. Then, yeah. Group home on Industrial Drive. She was there about a year and a half ago. Right across the street from Southside Storage. Duncan nodded once. That's number 5. They rolled in as the sky began to bruise into early evening. The place matched the drawing almost eerily. Gaps in the lights, the double gate, the rundown office with a flickering neon sign, sputtering like a warning. A handwritten sign hung crookedly on the office door. Back at 6 p.m. They didn't wait. Kent took the outer row. Duncan moved between the units. Most were rusted shut, untouched for years. But one, wedged near the back, had a brand new lock. Shiny. Too shiny. Wrong kind of lock for this neighborhood. Duncan radioed in. Gus, bring bolt cutters. Now. Kent pressed his ear to the door. Nothing. Then a shuffle. Another pause. A breath. Lily. His voice was soft but firm. It's Kent. From the diner. We're here. You're not alone. Silence. Then sniffling. Muffled but real. Gus pulled up 7 minutes later, breathless and swinging bolt cutters. Took 2 tries but the lock snapped. Duncan flung the door wide. The smell hit first. Stale air, sweat, fear. Lily was curled in the far corner, wrists zip-tied to a steel beam, a makeshift gag pulled tight across her mouth. Her face was bruised, eyes swollen shut, but she was alive. Kent cut her loose. Duncan scanned the rest. Empty wrappers, water bottles, a crumpled sleeping bag. Crane had set up for a long stay. Outside, Lily all but collapsed into Morgan's arms. She couldn't speak, not yet, but she clutched something in her hand. When the police arrived, called in by Palmer the second they found her, Lily pulled a folded, smudged piece of paper from her jacket. Another sketch, drawn with her finger in the dirt, then copied once she found pencil and time. It showed a car, partial license plate, and beneath that, an address. Even tied up in a concrete box, she hadn't stopped gathering evidence. Kent stared at the paper, then at Lily. You're not alone anymore, he told her. And this time, someone was finally listening. The license plate Lily remembered led police to a roadside motel, 40 miles outside town. Victor Crane was arrested just steps from his car, duffel bags slung over one shoulder, a fake passport tucked in the front pocket of his jacket. He didn't resist, didn't flinch, just watched the officers like a man who'd seen this scene play out before. and maybe even welcomed it. But it wasn't the arrest that sealed it, it was everything inside the storage unit. The drawings, the maps, her notes, her timeline, physical proof. It was more than evidence, it was a case. The district attorney called it one of the most thorough victim-led documentations they'd ever seen. A 14-year-old girl had done the work of a full investigative team, and done it better. The school issued a statement. Principal Carmichael went on local news, mouth pulled into a careful frown, announcing swift changes to school security, promised vigilance, expressed regret, but there was no mention of the men he'd shut out of his office. No nod to the warning he'd chosen not to believe. Still, the town remembered. 3 weeks after everything, Lily sat in Morgan's kitchen, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of hot chocolate. The bruises had faded to pale green shadows, and her nightmares didn't come as often. But the edge in her gaze, the one that looked for exits and lies, was still there, tucked just beneath the surface. Foster services found me a new place, she said, eyes down. It's a family about 30 miles from here. Seems okay. Morgan stirred sugar into her coffee, nodding gently. You call if it isn't. You call even if it is. Day or night. I know. Lily hesitated, then looked up. Can I ask something? Morgan nodded. Why'd you believe me when nobody else did? Morgan set down her spoon. Because we know what it feels like not to be heard. Maybe our stories are different, but that part, that silence, is the same. And we made a decision a long time ago. If someone shows up asking for help, we don't look the other way just because the world says they don't matter. There was a knock on the frame. Gus stood in the doorway, giving Lily a small nod. Kent wants to see you. Out front. Lily stepped outside. The vultures were gathered by their bikes, engines off but lined up like sentries. Kent stood beside his Harley, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. Before you head to the new place, he said, we wanted you to have this. She opened it carefully. Inside was the photo, the same school picture she'd handed Kent in the diner. But this time it was framed, clean and sturdy, matted in soft gray. Crane's face had been marked with a red X, bold, final. Below the frame, etched into a small brass plate, were the words, the moment everything changed. You didn't run. You warned us all. You saved yourself, Kent said. We were just the ones who showed up when it counted. Lily traced her fingers across the frame. Her eyes burned, but she blinked it away. I didn't think anyone would care. We cared, Duncan said, voice rough with something quieter underneath. Still do. And if anything goes sideways, you know where we are. A month later, the Vultures hosted a fundraiser, officially for the Children's Hospital, but word had spread. Some of that money was going to a trust in Lily's name. For her future, for whatever came next. The turnout blew past expectations. Families the club had helped. Shop owners, mechanics, a few teachers who remembered the news reports, people who wanted to give something back. Lily came too, her new foster family in tow. She wore jeans, a black t-shirt, and a leather bracelet Morgan had given her, embossed with a single word, believed. Principal Carmichael showed up briefly, kept to the shadows, and slipped out before anyone could corner him. During the event, a local reporter flagged down Duncan near the barbecue pit. People are calling your club heroes. How's that feel? Duncan looked across the lot to where Lily stood laughing at something Gus had said, her hands sketching again in the margins of a paper napkin. She looked like any other kid her age. Not a cautionary tale. Just a teenager finally breathing again. We're not heroes, Duncan said. We just paid attention. Sometimes that's all it takes. The reporter scribbled notes. And Lily? What happens next for her? She finishes school, makes choices, lives her life knowing she's not on her own. That's the goal, right? For all of us. As the sun dipped low and the crowd thinned out, Kent spotted Lily near the food tables, sketchbook open again. This time it wasn't blueprints or exits. It was dragons, flowers, wild shapes, and lazy swirls. Looks different, Kent said, nodding at the page. Lily smiled. A real one this time. Feels different. I'm drawing because I want to, not because I have to leave a trail. That's good, he said. That's real good. She closed the book, holding it close. You know what's weird? I tried for months to get adults to pay attention, counselors, teachers, cops. All of them were supposed to protect kids. But the only people who actually did something were the ones I was warned to stay away from. Kent let out a dry chuckle. Yeah, well, people like us, we've seen enough of the bad stuff to know what it looks like. We don't wear uniforms, but we listen. And you showed up. We showed up. Lily tucked the sketchbook under her arm. I'm going to be a social worker. Help kids like me. The ones nobody listens to. Kent nodded. You'll be great at it. You've got the one thing most people in that job don't. What's that? You remember what it feels like. As night settled in, families began to trickle out, headlights flashing against the lot. Lily stood once more in the circle of bikes, surrounded by the vultures. Not a conventional family, but hers. Morgan hugged her close. Palmer handed her a laptop, muttering something about schoolwork. Gus swore he'd teach her to change a tire. Duncan gave her a card, one phone number. No name. If you need something, he said, you call. Lily slipped it into her pocket, right next to the napkin Kent had given her the day she first walked into that diner. Because some numbers don't get erased. And sometimes the people who show up when it matters most aren't the ones in uniform. They're the ones the world warned you about. And they listen. The Stone Vultures weren't perfect, but they showed up when it mattered most. So here's the question. If a child came to you with the truth, would you have the courage to believe them? Drop your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to embrace the journey. Because every story we share reminds us that sometimes, the most unexpected people become the greatest protectors. See you in our next video.